Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Zenway podcast. I'm your host Zenway. On this podcast, we talk everything about life, career, and tech. Today, we're going to be speaking to a well-decorated marketer. She's won awards and, she's been with a lot of international brands and also well-loved local brands as well. And, she's now taking a very special path, I would say. So I can't wait to, have a conversation with her. We knew each other actually through an interview process, believe it or not, right? Because, at that point of time, I think she was also considering different paths as well. So we crossed paths then, and it was really interesting to see her path has taken shape to what it is today. So without further ado, maybe I'll pass the time back to you, Rachel, to quickly introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, thanks, Zenway. So hi guys, my name is Rachel. It's been a while since my last interview or catch up. So
funny how life turns out sometimes.
Yes. So I'm very honored to be here in this show that you're hosting. So I've been a marketer for the past 13 years or so. I have always been working in startups all the way to the growth stage and then becoming corporate. I've dealt in media, in influencer marketing and e-commerce, working in Shopee, as well as in beauty. The most recent corporate role would be in L'Oreal, as well as working with startups like OxWhite and D2C brands. I also do consulting on the side with brands. And today I have built my own startup. It's called the Nurts. I'll be sharing a little bit more later.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rachel. I think when I first spoke to you and saw your profile, I think one thing that kind of jumped out to me was really the brand that I actually bought a lot from, which is OxWhite. I don't know whether you remember me sharing this, but I actually bought a lot of things from OxWhite, so I was pretty excited to kind of speak to you in terms of trying to understand how they operate as well, right? So I was wondering in terms of I guess you mentioned quite a few phases, right? I think you started with kind of like an online media company as well, and it was Nafnang, which was way back then, right?
Yeah, this was when blogging was the biggest.
Yeah.
2009, I think, or 2010.
Yeah, I remember that, I also tried to kind of jump on the bandwagon because that at that point of time, it was really the beginning of, being able to earn some money through, just putting a Nafnang, logo and stuff.
Blog advertising.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering, throughout the evolution of your career, through all these kind of different brands, right? What are some of the key lessons that you can share with, marketers or, aspiring marketers, right? Because you've seen so many different kinds of more B2C kind of markets, right? Yeah.
So to start off, I think, sorry, I've had the opportunity to work with some of these brands from when they were really, really new in the market. So OxWhite included, Shopee included. And I think being able to learn while working and while building is something that I had the opportunity to do. And so I think a lot of the lessons that I've learned in the different roles, including things like A/B testing, trying different ways to acquire customers, retain customers, scaling through different methods, whether it's paid or organic, through different pillars. And I think one of the key things was really to say, hey, how do we adapt to constant changes? And it's like, your competitor is launching this. What do you do now? And we are still learning. Take for example, when we were new in Shopee, this was in 2016, I think, when we were in our first year. We were literally like a B2B to C app, like a marketplace, very similar to like Carousel back then, or I'm Sold. I don't know if you remember that. I'm Sold or 11th Street.
Yes, 11th Street. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So we had to learn a lot. I remember my first week in, it was like, hey, it's Chinese New Year. Come, let's build a Chinese New Year campaign. And I'm like, okay, what is that supposed to cover?
The usual Chinese New Year items, but
it's like ang bao, cookies, etc. So I'm like, okay, let's work. And back then it was like, I think 30 of us in the Malaysian office, including everybody.
Right.
And in marketing, it was just a handful of us. So we tried to figure it out. I tried to test it out, and then we saw a few orders, and we're like, wow, okay, so we're excited. Right. And then fast forward maybe 6 months to 1 year down the road, it's like, bam, things change so fast.
Yeah.
I think back then the biggest player was Lazada, who was who had the first mover advantage, right? Yeah. And they had a lot of brands on the platform. So we were like, wow, like that they're huge, right? And we are nowhere close, back then. And I think from that to maybe 1 year down the road, being like the top 3 shopping app and then chasing our way and growing our way so fast, getting the downloads, etc. I think that was very exciting. Things that I've learned, including things like being agile, right? So for example, if this happens, what do we do? Shall we try? Shall we cut fast, scale fast? So that mindset was very important. The team was very important because you can't be moving alone and then expecting the team to also not move, right, to get things done. So I give you an example. One of the most memorable, I think, social content was, I think there was a few years ago, there was a news on the ostrich on Federal Highway or something like that. I don't know if you remember. And we saw this sites covering it, and then we were like, oh, okay, what do we do? And then we were thinking, okay, let's create a meme. So we had a meme of our free shipping truck, and an ostrich chasing after it outside, saying, hey, no, don't forget, don't lose the good deals. So it was things like that was very fun, very memorable. So to me, the lesson there is, don't take everything so seriously. And it's about trying as well, and people loved it, and then we kind of found our humor in that sense, and our social content became more engaging, and we kind of knew what kind of content people like, for example, and that's how we learned. It wasn't from the day one where we're like, hey, we're going to do this A, B, C, D, E, and very often things don't go the way we plan, right? So that's number one. And I think number two is don't be afraid to fail and keep trying. Being in a startup environment, I think, as you know yourself as well, it's not being afraid to keep trying, keep finding out what's working, what's not working, and if it doesn't work, let's just try something else, right? And I think that it takes a certain mindset or team to achieve that, or to think like that. So I think that's the very key thing. And everything that we do, I think one thing that I've learned also is we have to set very clear goals, very clear, whether short-term or long-term goals, very clear objectives. Like, if you're going to do A, B, C, D, what is A, B, C, D going to achieve for us, versus doing it blindly. So very often, even me, while consulting a lot of brands, they know they want to achieve Z, but they're like, oh, okay, I want to achieve Z. How much does it cost to get me there, So for me, it's like, I don't have the answer for you, right? So it's a lot of let's do A and B, and then if A and B doesn't work, let's do C, right? And C doesn't work, we have D. There's always a plan, there's always a backup, and there's always a way to get things done. So that's kind of what I've learned, at least in e-commerce. And then, of course, on the other hand, your favorite brand, OxWhite, right? So I had the opportunity to work with CK, the founder. This was, I think, maybe 2-3 years ago. And they were about 2 years old. And it was a brand that people really love. People really love because they could relate to the brand, right? And it was about, I think the retention rate was one of the highest I've ever seen in any brand. So every month you would have maybe 6 out of 10 people coming back to buy products.
And it's crazy, right? Because look at where they started, right? It was only with one white shirt, right? And probably that's why it's named OxWhite, because it was just a white shirt, right?
So the story is, I'll leave CK to share his story, but like from what I know, they started off with one white shirt. And from the white shirt, people really loved the quality of the shirt and how it was made affordable. I think that was the key thing, right? It's consumers today are smart. They have access to everything, right? So to me, it's how do they shop and get the quality that they want at an affordable price. No longer like those days when I have to go to the mall only, go and touch and feel the material. And because online they have the customer service that is almost 24/7, talking to you. They have videos, they have reviews of other buyers sharing their review, like yourself. I'm sure you talk about how the OxWhite material feels on you, etc. So we had a lot of customers when we started off who, like yourself, buy a lot. My husband included. He's got all the colors of the OxWhite crew neck tee. Everyone loved it. But the lesson here, I think, is to really listen to the community, the buyers. So how OxWhite started was we had a community of very loyal customers and first early supporters, and every time we launch a new product, we will ask them for feedback. Ask them for feedback or ask them about colors that they want, and then get that feedback and we try to produce it to meet the demand. And I guess over time this helped us build a very strong community. And so when we launch new category of products, etc., it's just flow lah. Right? So I think one lesson here for everyone would be then, or including me, it's price and promotion can only get you that far. Right? It's really about how do you build something sustainable, a community or a follower base that's sustainable that you could engage with who would stay loyal to the brand, or at least your brand values.
I mean, that's a good, I guess, place to kind of conclude that question and jump to the next. Right, it's a good segue because wanting to kind of respect your time, I wanted to kind of understand as much as possible about you and the way you think, right? And on your LinkedIn profile, you talk about helping Malaysians to buy better instead of buying more. And I guess Seth Godin, which is I guess one of the marketing guru, also talked about like then it reaches a point where marketing needs to evolve, right? It's not just about consumerism anymore. And like you said, the consumers are not are smart people, right? So how can brands incorporate this kind of like purpose-driven marketing and create like meaningful connection, right? You mentioned just now around connecting with the community, listening to them. I'm wondering if there's anything else that I guess along in your career that you've kind of saw that it's really incorporating a purpose-driven kind of like marketing, right?
So based on my experience, I think talk about a few steps, right? Number one, I think as a brand, if I want to go down this route, it's about identifying your core beliefs. I feel like in the case of OxWhite, they're very strong in making something that is pricey affordable, so that the regular Malaysians can enjoy it, right? And making sure that they don't cut on quality. That's number one. And then sustainability in terms of making sure that the material that we're using is good for the environment, etc., and all that. So from day one, using OxWhite, they know what they believe in, and continuously we're creating products that meet that core values, right? Number one. And number two, I think it's about being authentic. Yeah, I think it's very important to be authentic. So I mean, we've seen so many marketing campaigns, billboard, digital ads, videos, YouTube videos, etc., and TVCs. I think being authentic is something that is very, very super important. It's at the core of any brand that wants to grow and scale, because then anything that you're doing, it's very consistent. Your values are very consistent. What you're shouting is very consistent, and consumers, like you say, are they are your buyers, right? And they are also people who are working for other brands, etc., and all that. And people know what it is, So to me, I think they can quickly spot insincerity in a brand if the brand is not very sincere and just trying to get your money, right? So that's my thinking. And I think lastly would be really to understand your audience, right? And like any marketing campaigns, really understanding who they are, what they are, not just the demographics of age, gender, location, right? It's also going beyond understanding what their interest is. For example, if I'm targeting moms, what do mothers like or dislike? What challenges do they go through? What's in the daylight of a mom? Go and talk to a focus group of moms. Ask them about where do they buy their products. What do they feel is where's the gap, right, in where they're trying to get their products or content, for example. And I feel all that understanding will help the brand develop, if they don't have a core value already, to develop that. And then consistently try and position and be consistent across all their messaging. So that I think would be a very first step to get there.
Yeah, like we've ran a few like user interviews, when we were at Thoughtful as well. I'm curious to also see, what when you run like user interviews or groups, right? What are some of the deeper questions that you would ask to really really understand, the group of audience as well? Right? Because sometimes user interviews, I've attended some as well, and I felt like it's not deep enough, because like you're just asking very surface questions that you could have just Googled. You get what I mean? Like, I'm curious in terms of like maybe one or two questions that perhaps will help you kind of like go a little bit deeper. Take for example maybe your latest venture, which we'll talk about it in a little bit, right? So if you were to run a kind of like focus group for the Nurts, for example, what are some like perhaps deeper questions you would ask to really understand their psyche, right?
So I'll it's a good question, because I this is a book that we recently just published. Parents Promise.
It's called A Parent's Promise.
So we self-published it on the Nurts. So when we were writing this book, the story behind it was we read a lot of bedtime story to our children. I've got 3 kids. I'm a mom of 3 kids, and my eldest is about 4.5, turning 5 soon. So my husband was reading a story to her, and then he was asking her like, hey, if mommy and daddy were to write you a book or produce a book, what would you like the book to be about? And she said, I want to know what mommy and daddy's roles are in my life, and that sparked
That's a really deep question for a 4 to 5 years old.
Yeah, so I guess the relationship that we have is we try to communicate and try to ask questions and have discussions, very deep discussions with our children. And so I think that sparked that idea in us, and we are thinking, we buy a lot of books for children, and board books lah, cloth books lah, all kinds of books, and they're not cheap. And then to find a book that has values about something like what she's talking about, we couldn't find one.
Right.
Yeah, so then in the end, my husband Adrian decided to write it.
Wow.
So he wrote it. He's not a writer; he's a marketer as well. And I produced it, and I think this is one of the learning curve as well, because I've never published a book in my life.
Right.
Yeah. So to me, it was okay. How do we publish a book? We write it already. Go look for illustrator. Find a style that I like, and then look for how to get the ISBN number, the code, how to get it published, what are the do's and don'ts, how do you distribute it, etc., and all that.
Right.
So I had to study all that, and that to me was very exciting because it was learning all over again, right? Like how do you build something from scratch? So in that case of the book, then back to your questions, and I think it's also about asking other parents, like, hey, if we had something like that, or what do you do to bond with your children? And these are questions that I don't think people will ask or think about. It's very much what books do you read? What type of categories? The surface level. What do you buy them, etc. Right? To us, it's what do you do to bond with your child, for example? And they're sharing their heart. They're pouring their heart out about all the challenges that they're facing, or even questions like, actually, sometimes I don't know, because we are playing the same toys all over again. We're reading the same books all over again. And then I'm like, okay, if there were, what kind of books do you think would benefit you and your child, right? Or what kind of relationship do you want with your child, right? I think that these are deep questions that a parent, if you ask me also, I'll take some time to think about, okay, what kind of relationship I want with my child. Maybe for me, I would want to become her best friend when she grows up, so she talks to me and we are openly chatting about things. But other parents might be different, right? So I think we ask parents questions like that. And after that, we realized that, hey, actually, there is a gap where people don't really have this kind of product in their lives. And it's not just a product already. It's kind of like a social movement, I guess, in a way, because this book, A Parent's Promise, was created really to strengthen the bond between parent and child. And it was stemmed from our own personal experience, because when we wrote it, it was written with our intent to communicate to the parent, is communicating our awareness about what we do for our children, our roles in all the various aspects, from health to safety to being a friend to being a mentor to being a coach, etc., to remind us that this is our role. We're not just a parent to tell them what to do. They are their own individual, for example. That's what we believe in. Whereas for the child, it's also about making them feel secure. Imagine hearing your parent reading like you this book every night before you sleep, telling you how much they love you, also telling you about how they're there for you, they're your mentor, you can come to them, you can talk to them, we are your coach, but we're also your friend, etc. And hearing that consecutively, right, that will build up the confidence, that will help them feel more secure, and that will strengthen the bond, because we tried that out with our own children. We noticed that different age group would react differently to the book even. Like, for example, my son, who's 2 years old, he likes the illustration. So he'll be like, oh, butterfly, oh, that's me, I'm in the garden, blah, blah, blah. So we're like, okay. So we discussed that, and every night he will ask me to read him the book. And he will tell me, I want to read A Parent's Promise. So I said, okay, let's do that. And what's interesting is we also see this same pattern in some of our buyers, our customers who bought the book. Yeah, so I will ask them. So typically, because we are a small business, right? So after they buy, I will also ask them and follow up. Hey, have you read the book? Any feedback? How can we improve? Or how has your child reacted to the book? And so some of the parents who find this book very useful as a tool, they will tell me like, oh, their child asks a lot of questions, or their child want to read that again every night, things like that. And that makes me very happy, because it's like, wow, this tool is very useful. It's not just a book for the sake of being a pretty book, or being a book that the child likes the illustrations only, for example. So I think that really sets us apart then, in that sense of what we try to create. Yeah, because our first tool or product in a way was the card game. And even that, the card game was but funny story is the card game was actually a conversation that I had with Adrian, and we were like thinking, hey, as new parents, this was like 3 years ago during MCO. As new parents, we have a lot of resources, but all of them are like serious stuff, like books, articles, apps. We subscribe to
What to do if this happens? What to do if that happens?
yeah, and then and we thought as parents really quite stressful. New parents, we're trying to figure out everything. I'm sure you also go through that with a newborn.
Okay.
And back then we were like, okay, if we were to do something, what would it be about parenting? What would we want to communicate about our experience? Because we had then a lot of our friends who were new parents as well. Then they will ask us to share some tips or share our experience. And we thought, hey, why don't we gamify the whole parenting experience through our personal experience? So then we created this card game to teach people what it's like, or to simulate parenting experience as much as possible. So in this card game, for example, they are raising kids. They're choosing a kid profile. They're choosing their own profession, just like real life. You have money, you have time, and then you make decisions in this game. Whether it's taking them on a trip out, doing arts and crafts, or whether it's bringing them to the museum, etc., and all that. And what we believe in is really to create something where the parents are very aware of what their kids' strengths are, and to do experiences or expose them to things that they are strong in. Yeah, so I think that's kind of like the little mini social movement that we're trying to create. Is to expose the kids to things that they are really good at, or to groom them, based on what they're strong in. Yeah.
That's really special, because I think the one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of reach out to you and have you on the show is to also I think scratch my own curiosity as well, right? Because being a young parent, 11 months old, the things that you spoke about around, like, what kind of relationship do I want to have with my son, and the challenge of like the worries about what kind of, I guess, simulating, I always simulate like what would my son grow up to be, right? So I guess maybe the Nurts is good for me as well, to be able to kind of play out the different scenarios, and we are very mindful of wanting to kind of make sure that they have he grows up doing what he wants instead of what we want as well, right, as parents. So that's really something really, really special. I was thinking along the lines of, like, for example, the Nurts, for example, right? You've answered actually quite a few questions that I wanted to ask, so thank you for that as well. But really, I think I wanted to ask around, like, when it comes to such a product and the social movement, right? Do you think that actually people are very just needed the resources, and we are all kind of like wanting to go into that direction, but we just don't know how? Is that what you're observing, or do you see that perhaps there is still a little bit of educating the market that needs to be done to say, like, hey, this is actually pretty cool, and this is a really wonderful way of engaging with your child, for example, right? What are you seeing? Yeah.
So I'm still learning in terms of how to communicate this out. We see so far from our base of buyers and customers and community is something new. So we are approaching it more as a helping you to learn as you grow kind of approach. So I would say, if you were to ask me, Nurts, what's our mission, right? It's really to help empower you on a lifelong learning journey. Right? It's from a kid, you're growing, and then to an adult, to a parent, etc. How can we provide you the right tools to help you grow and discover and nurture your personal development as an adult, as a parent, as a working adult, etc. Right? So I think in general, at least in Malaysia, where we are at, it's still new. It's still new to people, this concept. The mindfulness, even from when you're in, I think, thoughtful, I think the mindfulness aspect, mental health, being very aware, self-awareness, all these things are quite new, at least to people that I talk to. They don't think about this on top of their mind. It's not something that they just think about constantly, right? It's something that they would probably think about when you go to them and you ask them, hey, what do you think about this? So yes, a lot of education is required. And then we talk about how to educate them, right? How do you make it exciting for people to be excited about what you do, or how you can help them? So I would approach Nurts as more of a platform with tools rather than products to go and buy, right? So when I talk to people, it's like, oh, okay, how do you bond with your kid in that case, right? Would you consider having a book that talks about your role in their lives, etc.? And then from there, we discover that, oh, will this help them, or will they not? Will they not be interested, for example? So yes, it's an ongoing learning and educating and creating that awareness while talking to them. So it's not something that already is in the market per se. But I do see that this is something that is very important, especially post-pandemic. People are thinking about, ways to find that more work-life balance. Mental health is now a thing that is no longer a taboo, for example. People are openly discussing it. So for us, we are going down the route of, so Nurts is actually short for nurturing. And nurturing is about helping people to discover and learn something, So to me is, how can we be part of that movement? How can we create the tools, or even whether it's product-based or whether it's digital content, etc. How do we create that for people? And how do we help make a little bit of impact or add that value in their lives? Yeah, that to me is the mission of building this. Yeah.
I mean, talk to me a little bit about the creative process, right? Like, the mission, and also I guess the movement you're trying to create can sometimes feel like it's very aspirational for good reason, right? And sometimes you kind of like need to bring it down to the market, and find creative ways, to make them feel like, hey, this is something I want to be part of, right? So when you're creating the Nurts, for example, what's that creative process like? I'm actually quite a big fan of gamification, because in my line of work last time also, I applied quite a few gaming principles as well, and the balance of the game, right? Yes, there are a lot of good things you want to impart to people, but at the same time, the game cannot be broken in a sense, right? So what's that creative process like, from the concept to the game mechanics to producing it, right? Walk us through a little bit about that process, right?
Okay, let me try. So I think for us, with at least the products that we have created, very often it is stemmed from a need or a gap. Like, based on our own personal experience or people that we speak to, we realize that, hey, there is a gap for something like this. And then we start thinking deeper about, if you were to create something like that, how do we create it? And then, of course, ultimately, it has to make sense, right? To whether as a commodity or as a service, etc., right? So to us, then it's moving on to the next stage of validating it, right? Whether it's talking to a group of community or our target audience and asking them about what do they think about this. So for the game, for example, I've held multiple playtest rounds. Small groups or big groups, even a group of 40 people, for example, rented a cafe, put them there, tried different target audience, parents as well, and then non-parents, like working adults, get them to play it, and then ask them for their feedback, and then get different profile people, even like, let's say, gamers, hardcore gamers playing it, and people who don't even play card games, and ask them to try it. So then we tried to get as many different aspects as possible to break it, I guess, to say like, hey, where are the gaps, where are the cracks that we need to fix, right? Then after that, we try to fix, find loopholes. But even then, it's still not perfect, right? It's still going to be people that you cannot please. So for us, it's doing that. Same for the book. I guess the card game was a lot more complicated. There's a lot of aspects, balancing the resources, and there are 200 over cards, and we illustrated every single piece of card. It took us about almost a year to develop everything, to finding the manufacturer, the supplier, and even that itself, it was another tough battle, right? Looking for the right quality that I wanted. But talking about the creative process, it's also about thinking, trying to put as much personal experience as well as relevant content that would feed the general public, right? And the masses, balancing that. So it's no longer just a personal tool, right? So how do I benefit this tool for other people as well? And not everyone's going through what you're going through. And culture as well is one thing to consider, right? If I'm going to market this content or this product in the US, for example, like this card game, when we first launched, we put it on Kickstarter. And we got it funded on Kickstarter in 30 days first to raise funds. And then we started bringing it to our website.com, and then we had US buyers, Australian buyers, Netherlands buyers. So
what was the goal of the Kickstarter? What was the Kickstarter goal amount at that point of time?
I think it was a few thousand dollars USD. So we just, I think internally my goal was, number one, to validate the concept. Like,
would people actually buy and would be interested in this?
Correct. And it's a pre-order, right? But to be honest, I've already placed the order.
You're very honest because look, I mean, the amount of horror stories from Kickstarter where the project doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, I already placed the order.
Yeah,
I guess you have to be confident in your product,
It's true,
right?
yeah.
But internally, I think the goal for the Kickstarter was validation.
Wow.
It wasn't to just raise funds.
Yeah.
That was a plus, lah.
Yeah.
But it was to validate that this is a product that globally or different audience can accept or can understand.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting because for the Kickstarter campaign, I think at least about half of the backers were US
Wow.
and US citizens, and then we had Australian backers,
Right.
Netherlands backers.
That's so encouraging.
Yeah, very encouraging and super excited, and you have people telling us about how excited they are to have the product.
Wow.
And so then to me that was a motivation, like of how do we make this better? How do we get this produced faster?
Wow.
So that really motivated me.
Right.
So that was really the goal, and when we got very good feedback, that's where I'm like, okay, let's just test it out. So we tested out, we printed it, and then we fulfilled it, and then we got people to review, play test. Also, all that process happened with the card game at least for the first quarter, I would say.
Right. So Kickstarter to actually producing it took another quarter because it took a year, right?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, it took a year. So in fact, I started the card game like way in like last year, and then by the time it went live on Kickstarter, it was already Q1 this year.
Wow.
Right? A lot of preparation, and then finding the right manufacturer to work with. So I've tried local printers, I've tried China printers, overseas printers, and then we tested a few. We got feedback as well. We brought the different types of cards to go to the playtest, ask people to touch it. Which card do you like? You know, and then we had so many feedback about how, oh, this one is too smooth. This is too thin. This one can scratch easily, etc. So all that was part of the learning curve for me. And then we finally found something that everybody could agree on. Like, okay, this one not too hard, cannot scratch easily, etc. Waterproof. If someone pours water on it, that's important when you're playing card games, right? So we had to think about all that aspect. And then finding a manufacturer that you're comfortable with as well is very important.
Right.
So then we found one.
Curious whether that's local, whether Malaysia Power is able to produce it, right? Or we had to end up with overseas, which is also fine, right?
Yeah, so we tried both. In the end, for mass production, we went with overseas. Also reason because in terms of the quality, like something like this, locally, the machine that they need and all that, they don't really have that. They don't really have that. And timeline to produce a bulk order of a few thousand or etc. is not as fast as we would like to as well. So a lot of aspects. And I think because overseas manufacturer might also have the experience dealing with European board games, card games, because card games are huge, right, in the European market. So they are a lot more experienced. So they can teach me a thing or two. So give me tips on this material is good, this size is good, blah blah blah, right? And
your printing is too close to the border.
Or the margins, or like majority of European card game uses this kind of material, and you try to create something that is on par, right? Even though we are a new card game.
Agree.
And I think what's very important, like a first time customer for us, when they touch and feel the box, they know the quality. The first impression is very important. And I think I learned that from OxWhite. I learned that from OxWhite, right? That's something that I otherwise I would never have known, because I've always worked with platforms, right? Like whether it's Shopee or nothing. So OxWhite taught me also that, hey, first impression matters, quality matters. So don't go and cut corners and give people like poor quality, because after that they may not like your product, they don't trust you anymore, and that trust is very important to build from day one. So I try as much as possible, even if the margins are slightly smaller, it's okay to build that trust, and that at least the first experience is very important. And onward, all our products are good quality.
I agree. Like this reminds me that I actually bought a set of conversation prompts, or kind of like a card game, from Kickstarter as well. And it was really, I was trying to kind of have deeper conversations with my wife, right? So it's just basically like you don't want to talk about the same old. So we actually I actually bought like a few packs just to see what kind of conversations that we can have. So it's really encouraging to see like such a simple tool can impact so many people, right? I'm curious in terms of when it comes to like impactful stories, right? Is there one that you remember very distinctively from your customer or a community member that you could share that perhaps really just inspired you to really just continue on this journey, right?
We have a couple.
Right.
I think from the first few customers that we had, those were very, very memorable to me as very special, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first customer, she found us on Instagram,
Wow.
right? And then she pinged me and she bought 3 Nurts card game at one shot. Yeah, so I
Not
was very,
someone you know, right?
and it's not someone I know, it's
Yeah,
not friends or family,
Yeah.
right? So to me, it was like, wow, okay. I reached out to her and then I asked her about what drove her to buy 3 boxes
right?
at one go. And this was a mom, she was a mom, and she, and then we had that conversation, and I personally went to deliver the products to her, and then to kind of understand, right? And to her, she was just trying to play the game with her girlfriends or with other moms. So she was telling me, oh, we have play dates. We have play dates, very typical of young parents. We have play dates among different family households. So to make it more exciting, we also decided to bring card games, board games, and we decided to host and play. So they thought that parenting made fun, right, as a card game, that would be very suitable for their game, the game night, right? So I thought, so that was interesting. That was the first few customer lah.
Wow.
Then I think the book was really more of the heartwarming ones.
Yes.
Yeah, the book was really more heartwarming because when we started off, I actually also gave it out to a few of our community members to get their responses or to get their feedback, honest feedback, right? And I gave it to them and I asked them to read this, right? Read this and tell me what you think. So I think about one really stood out for me was I think Joanna, one of a friend of mine. So she gave the book, read the book every night I think to her children. I think she's got 2 kids, and I think she also texted me and said, I teared when I read the content. And then I was like, wow, okay, like what did I do? so she said, she said, it's very, very personal, and she could relate to it because she is my target audience, and I created it from my own experience, hoping to connect that and people who are going through the same life stage, right? It can relate to it, and she was one of them, and so she told me like I really teared, and this is such a good product. I really like the book, and it really touched her, right? So we have a lot, and she's just one example. There are a lot of parents who have bought the book and told me different stories about how maybe the toddler only want to read the book at night and only want the parent to read with, because this book was created for the parent and child to read together. So it is the whole point, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, that's the whole point.
Its purpose
Exactly,
sense, right?
exactly. So we have that, and also at the same time, we don't really fix on when you should read the book, right, to your kid. But it is kind of, I realize people read it for bedtime routine. So very often bedtime routine, the child wants the comfort of the parent. So you're bonding and then you're reading this book. They feel even more secure. So that's kind of some of the feedback that we've gotten now. The most recent one that is very memorable to me was last weekend. We had a booth at Jaya One. Right. It was for 2 days, and then next to me was one of our partner. Her son was selling Pokemon toys. And then his son was, I think Aiden was 10 years old. He's 10 years old, right? And I asked him, oh, why are you running the store? And then he said, oh, because I'm trying to save up for my Japan trip.
Wow.
So so I was very impressed. He's 10 years old, trying to sell something to earn enough money
to go to Japan.
To go to Japan or to buy more Pokemons in Japan.
For sure. That's definitely the aim. If I'm 10 years old saving up to go to Japan, I want more Pokemon, man.
And then you know what happened on Sunday when it was the last day of the sale or the booth, right? He came in front of my booth, and then he took out all his revenue, all his money, all the cash, and then he said, I want to buy a Nurts card game.
Oh my god. Hearing that story, I want to cry as well. My goodness.
He's a 10-year-old who sat there. So that because during the 2 days, we had a booth for people to play. So he played the game.
Okay.
He played the game. He's only 10 years old. He won so many rounds. He really liked it. So he played the game, and then he kept telling the mom like, oh, I want to buy. Can you buy it for me? Then the mom said like, you have to work and earn your own, earn your own income lah.
Good on the mom as well, right?
So good on the mom. Then as we were towards the end of the day already, then he suddenly came to my booth. I'm like, oh, Aiden, what's up lah? Then he said, I want to buy. I finally got enough money from my Pokemon sale to buy the card game. So I was like, oh my god, I was very, very.
I mean, I've been at booths before, and the amount. It's so hard to make a sale, right? It's all about. To me, sometimes it's more about awareness than anything. Obviously, if you have a superb product, things can be very different. But for him to, oh wow.
Yeah, so this one was very memorable. Yeah, he used all his revenue, and then I felt so bad after that. So
Do you give him a discount or not?
yeah, you got discount. I told Dora, if you're hearing this, I told Dora, like, you know what, maybe I should make him a little affiliate, let him earn for his Japan trip after buying our card game. Maybe he could, have an affiliate link or something to push Nurts products and tools, and he can earn, and we can, make him one of our ambassador or something to push the card game that he really likes. So that was the most recent, I think, that stuck with me, because just me telling you feel it, right?
Of course. I mean, like, hey, you won over Pokemon. Pokemon it's probably the biggest gaming franchise in the world with so much money at their disposal. Obviously, they know how to create very attractive games, right? Because I'm a big fan of their card games and all that kind of stuff as well. So for you to be able to win a 10-year-old over Pokemon, my goodness, I'm now excited to play the Nurts. So thank you so much, Aiden, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Aiden, if you're listening to this, I'm gonna buy a Nurts game after this. I'm gonna use your affiliate link, right?
There you go, you got one sale already.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that I think that would be the most memorable, at least the most recent.
Thanks for sharing that. I think, having been on a career break myself, right? Hearing this kind of story and having an 11-month-old son, sometimes I've asked myself whether I wanted to try entrepreneurship, to be honest, right? Because I have a lot of, very supportive friends that would like to encourage me to do so as well. Partly also because, like, say, hey, you know what, you seem like you can do it, right? So I wanted to ask you, like, obviously we need to consider the demands of, the demands of starting a business and the parent that I want to be. I want to be a very involved and present father, right? And therefore, obviously it becomes more daunting. So I want to ask you, like, how do you manage the demands of all this, right? Throughout all this, and then, having like 3 children at the same time, how do you do it, right? Yeah.
You're not the first one to ask me. I think a lot. It takes a lot of self-motivation also, I feel, and takes a lot of supportive friends and family. Yeah, so especially my husband is very supportive, and having him to assure me that, hey, you know what, like, we'll always make it work, we'll always find ways to make it work. That pushed me further. My easiest answer is like Nike's logo, I just do it. Yeah, for me, I think it's a lot about from my past experience working in startups, right? It's just do it and then figure it out and just keep learning, keep going, and then having that having the goal, knowing what you want to achieve, not being afraid to fail, try again, tweak different methods, etc. That has kept me on my toes, and that has kept me going. Yeah, so it wasn't something that I suddenly thought of, I want to be a kind of entrepreneur, right, or just build something. It started off as an idea that we had, and then, hey, there are good feedback, and then what's the next tool that we will create? And as we created more and more, and we had more and more feedback from community and the impacts that we're making, then we were like, oh, okay, this can be something bigger. And so then we started creating more, and that's kind of how it started.
I see. Do you think about, to go a little bit deeper on that, right? Do you think about, I guess, like, fail safe, for example? Like, yes, take calculated risks, just if you have an idea, go and try it out, validate it, right? But behind that, right, that kind of planning, right, that often people don't talk about, right? What kind of things do you kind of put in place to say, like, okay, with that in place, I can go and try? Or do you not think about it, right? Either way, the different people have different journey. I'm just curious in terms of, like, how do you go about it, right? Yes, like, just do it. But around that, do you need to kind of set in place certain things before you go, right? Because it's quite different, I would imagine, compared to, let's say, like, for example, I'm in my 20s, I'm single, and I have all the energy in the world, versus now, right? I think the demands is very different. So I'm curious in terms of that, right?
So I think yes, I take calculated risks. I don't just jump in. That will scare me. Yeah, so I do. Of course, we work out on the plans, very important. But like I say, plans don't always work out as you want to. So be flexible. Projections, right? Looking at financial projections. And Nurts, I self-funded myself, right? And then we have a partner right now. So to me, it's also having the projection, looking at where you're going, and then looking at whether you're on track, right? And what's the breaking even point, etc. Do we need to raise funds, etc. So having that in mind would make me feel more secure, knowing that I have I'm on track.
Right.
Or if I'm not on track, what will I do? So all that has been thought through, at least when I'm planning the business. Initially.
Do you give yourself, like, let's say, like, for example, I feel like this could be a great idea. Let me give myself maybe like a 6 to 9 months, right? If it doesn't happen by, if let's say X doesn't happen by 6 months, then perhaps I need to change up the idea, reconsider something. Do you think about all those things, right?
Yes, of course. Of course. Like, so for me, I have roadmaps, and the roadmaps keep changing, based the roadmaps keep changing. It's like, okay, what we're going to do, what we're going to build, right? So now that we are a little bit, we have more feedback and a bigger community, then I'm able to also look at the data sets and say, okay, this works, this not working, then I'm planning towards what's working and scaling what I can within my means, right? So yes, I have certain milestones. I wouldn't say time frame per se, but I would have milestones to say, okay, if we achieve this, then we know that this is working, and then we are going to do this next steps, for example. And I think all that is very important for anybody who wants to go into this journey. Don't go in blindly, right? Unless you have a very deep pocket. So for me, I don't, right? So for me, everything is self-funded. So I have to make sure that I make it work.
Do you think, like, because there are a few, I guess, numbers thrown around in a sense, right? If let's say you want to try something, make sure you have, I don't know, like 1.5 years runway, 2 years runway to take care of your commitment, right? Do you think there's a kind of like a range that you would recommend?
I think that is very subjective for the kind of business you're going into, right? Yeah. If it is a franchise business, totally different, right? If it's a D2C business, what kind of products, what kind of category? Do you need to do consignment? Is it going to be holding stock, producing yourself? So very, very different. So I don't really have a range per se. But you kind of know, right, whether you're working on it on your own, what your basic commitments are. Can you afford to at least a 2-year runway, I would say, right? If
generally,
if you don't speaking, if you don't get any income at all for 2 years, how long can this work, right? So I have that number in mind, and what is that benchmark, or what is that max that you can stretch to, right? And if this doesn't happen in that max, what's the backup plan? And I think today, at least from what I see, right, a lot of people have their own businesses or side income or side gigs. It's very common today. So I would recommend that anybody who is thinking about it to just do it. Try it. You never know, right? I think that's my personality. It's just try it, right? You never know. So even if it's something that's secondary income, it's still great. At least you're trying it, right?
So the Nurts is not your first stint. I saw that you obviously started something else, which is in real life media, and it was acquired, right? Which is tell me a little bit about that, right? Like, I think you that was what, 2 years in the making until you got acquired, right? Were there any, how was that looking back, right? How was it when starting it until, like, you got acquired? Any kind of like lessons learned that you brought forward to the Nurts, or it's like totally different, right?
For sure got lessons.
It's never a smooth journey.
For sure. So when I was building, so in real life was also very much a passion-led interest and idea first. So I'm a big lover of content, right? So I built a content site that was very much like a medium.com or Talk Catalog for locals. And in real life, was the purpose behind it was very similar to Nurts in that sense, where I want people to inspire each other through their personal journey. But in that way, it's through content, right? Personal stories. So I started it off as like a blog, right? And then gotten people to submit their stories. And unlike any publication, you don't really need someone to actively edit the story, right? Because it's personal pieces, right? It's supposed to be genuine, and you don't really edit someone's life story, right? So we've got a lot of different types of content, from drug stories, from jail writing it, or to like somebody who is a sugar baby, to totally different, all kinds of walks of life, right? We don't judge, but of course it's very interesting. So to me, it's how do I share this story out? And there wasn't any platform, right, that people can just go to and say, hey, I want to write a story, and they could submit their own stories on the platform. And then we had our own writers who go and interview people as well. So the learning there is authenticity also, again, right? Being authentic, personal experience, very important. But as a business, then I also learned a lot, right? Because that one was very much a traffic and numbers game, right? Because the bigger the publication, then maybe brands will come and work with you, advertise on your platform, etc. The business model was definitely something that was already proven in the market. I know that it can work, but it does take a lot of effort and a lot of resources to scale it, right? So at peak, I think we were at about 100k visits a month, around there, right? And so we had to consistently keep generating and keep hitting that, and it just became that kind of ball game, right? So I ran it for about 2 years until MCO, and then we got acquired from World of Bus and Influ Asia. I think that really fit in very well, because to me it's either you set up your own big media conglomerate or publication company and start building more and more platforms, or you just work with somebody who's already in the market, right? Be part of it. And I think that it made sense to us at that time, because how do we grow beyond that, right? From 100k to 1 million, for example, is by working with people who are exactly like so even simple aspects, from video producer to more writers to ramping up the stories to marketing resources. They had all that, right? So to me, it made sense, and it was like a little baby for me, right? Like the IRL was I want to see it work. I want to see this platform being used by more people, right? And so it made sense for me, and they would be able to help me scale it further, which otherwise I wouldn't be able to, because I was still working full time. Yeah.
That's crazy, because like I think it has inspired, I guess, more similar types of I guess, channels. Like for example, Malaysia Pay Gap, for example, is gotten so popular. They also run a similar style, in a sense that people are really just telling their stories, right? And talking about in real life itself, I recently just read an article from there that was like super interesting, because it was the one that talked about how the boss actually begged an employee to come back after he or she resigned, and the way the story was laid out, my goodness, it was really, really very interesting. So I think I think the legacy continues in terms of really just making sure that people it's genuine, right? At least it appears to be genuine, and I hope it's genuine as well. I think looking forward, right? It's talking about legacy, because I felt like the things that you've built in terms of in real life, and also the Nurts, it really has a kind of like hopefully a sustained impact and legacy, right? So I'm thinking like, what kind of legacy do you hope to kind of live through Nurts, right? What kind of impact do you want to achieve, right?
So I think when I think about it from a big picture point of view, right? It's very much I hope that Nurts as a platform, with whatever resources or tools that we build, would be able to help add value in people's lives through their personal growth, or at least whether as a parent or as working adult, etc., whether in different aspects of their lives, to help nurture them in that aspect, right? And at the same time, I think learning, take for example, if you look at learning today in Malaysia, it's very much academic focus, and it's rote learning, and it's literally preschool to primary school to secondary school to college to uni. After university, you're on your own, literally, right? You're on your own, and if you want to learn some more, you're on your own, you decide, right? So to me, it's about also closing that gap, right? On how do we support people who are first jobbers, people who are going through difficulties in their life, or people who are just seeking help or assistance, and finding tools to make it easier. And make it fun. So making learning fun is also quite important to me. Because I think people always associate learning with homework, boring, must be this. So to me, it's like Nurts, the game, the book, etc. Everything that we try to create, it has to be fun. And convey a value that we're trying to convey, right? So trying to make learning fun is very important as well. And the idea is to have Nurts as a platform that will empower lifelong learning. And lifelong learning is very, very different from traditional learning method, because lifelong learning is literally you're learning at your own pace, and it doesn't cover just academics. It covers any aspect of your life. If you feel like you are, you need help in this area, like self-confidence or mental health or etc., there is something for you, right? And I think as a woman myself, who's a mom of 3, I think I'm still constantly learning myself. As an entrepreneur, I'm still learning. As a marketer, I'm still learning as well. So I think I believe that people are always learning as they grow, right? And so Nurts as a platform, the legacy that I want to build is then one day, people who come into the platform and find something that they can use or play or learn something on the platform. And that's what we're trying to build, and hopefully this will be something people will find useful, rather than just a commodity that is selling something to you. I would want them to be able to find the value in the tools that we create.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's super important, because I think, again, being a young parent to a 11-month-old son, I can relate to a lot of what you say in terms of, you know, it's very. I think what we want for our children is similar, in a sense that, you talk about, a promise, a parent's promise, right? The kind of message that you want to really have that bond with. I credit this to my wife. She found this set of books where it talks about how the different ways that we love you, as a kid, right? And we kind of use that on our daily basis, and at night as well, and stuff like that. So even though he does not understand, he's more interested in flipping the pages now. But I felt like, it's still important for them to to be able to have that messaging, and also have that I guess that routine with us as well, right?
Correct.
So I'm hoping that the day that he understands more, that he'll start asking questions like some of your
Exactly my target audience.
precisely. You found, at the very least, you have found another customer today. But so, I'm really glad that someone like you in Malaysia is trying to do this as well. So coming to that, I think I'm also learning. I hope that to be able to get more perspective as well. So to amplify your impact, I've came up with this hypothetical question to kind of perhaps conclude the towards the end of our segment, right? If you can change every parent's phone wallpaper for a day, right, or maybe for a month, I don't know, right? What will you have it say or show?
If there was a saying that I would put, it would be, so believe you can and you're halfway there. It means it's the mindset. As long as you believe that you can do it, you're already halfway there. You just have to keep going.
Right.
Yeah. In any aspect of life, I believe that as long as you have the intention, and the intention is right, the motivation, just keep going, and you eventually get there.
Yeah, I think that's really true, because I think when I go through this whole parenting journey, right, I felt like a lot of it is actually about us as well, as parents.
Oh, a lot, for sure.
Right? So there's definitely a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of, like, I guess, self-criticism. So what you say around, like, believe that you can, you're already halfway there, is so encouraging. So imagine, like, every time you open you switch on your phone, and that's what it says. I think that's pretty impactful. Yeah. So Rachel, thank you so much for inviting me to your home. This is as real as it gets,
Yes.
right? Coming into your house, and having all kinds of activities happening on the background. I hope that we are also we manage to kind of portray the genuine aspect of us having a conversation as well. So really thank you so much for being on the show. It was such a fun chat with you, Rachel.
It was. Thank you so much, Zenwei. Thanks for having me.